Okay, hello. I'm very excited to conduct this next interview with the help of Xander Shapano. We are going to interview someone who is a familiar face to you here at school. So if you could please start by introducing yourself and letting us know what your job or career is.
So my name's Miss Grove, and I am the school psychologist at Greenville High School.
So what steps did you need to take to get to where you are now?
So there are kind of a lot of steps, I think, to take to become a school psychologist. You have to have a certificate of advanced study, which is something, or a doctorate. So a PsyD, which is a doctorate in psychology. Those are like the two options for becoming a school psychologist in New York State. In other states, you might have a different degree. It's called an EDS, which is just like an education specialist degree, specifically for school psychology, which is the same as a CAS. It's basically like a master's plus an extra master's, which it sounds really weird because you'd think that would equal a doctorate, but it actually doesn't. In order to get a doctorate, you have to continue on that same path for another 2 years and do research. So if you're a school psychologist who wants to get a doctorate, the advantage of that is that you can work outside of a school district, and you're considered a psychologist, a standalone psychologist. If you have a certificate of advanced study, which is what I have, you can only be considered a school psychologist. So as a psychologist, you can do outside practice, you can do counseling, you can do all sorts of other things outside of the school. As a school psychologist who only has a CAS, you have to work within the school, and you still do counseling and all of that stuff, but just within the school district.
Thank you for explaining that. That's helpful. I didn't know that. So could you walk us through a typical day in your field of work here at school?
I feel like that is a hard question. So I can answer for myself, and I can also answer for a little bit of other people, because as a school psychologist, your job can look so different depending on what kind of school district you're in. Or again, if you have your doctorate degree, you can be working outside of schools, and that looks very different as well. So for me, I do a lot of counseling here at Greenville. So I do counseling for anybody who has an IEP or a 504 and needs that kind of a support. I also do a lot of assessments, and my assessments, what they're for is to help figure out what a student needs in order to be successful in school. So if we're finding that a student is struggling with something, we have to figure out why, right? Because in order to help them with that issue, we need to know what the issue is and kind of go deeper. So I do a lot of assessments. It might be cognitive assessments, social emotional assessments, or even academic assessments to kind of see where a student is and kind of figure out interventions that we can do to support them. So going off of that, I also do help support with interventions. So I work with teachers to help them figure out how to best support their students in the classroom. I also run a group called the Greenville Mental Health Advocates with Ms. Neely, who's a teacher here. And what our goal is in that group is to promote mental health on a tier 1 level. And when I say tier 1, I mean like the school as a whole. So the whole school, what can we do to support everyone's mental health, right? Because usually as a school psychologist, you're working with on a tier 3 level, which means that you're working one-on-one with students who need intensive support, or you're working at a tier 2 level, you're working with groups of students who need some supports. So it's really nice here that I get to work on all those different levels, and kind of I have a lot of variety. And I think that's kind of the theme for school psychologists. Historically, school psychologists were only assessing and placing students. So basically what they did was they did the assessments, figure out what the issue is that the student is struggling with, and then figure out interventions they can do, or schools can do, to support them, and what kind of accommodations they might need if they have 504s or IEPs. And then that kind of got pushed off to teachers and to other counselors to kind of administer. But school psychology is becoming more diverse, and school psychologists are used for many more things. So they're used, again, to look at those tiered services and how we can support students. And they're also used to do tier 3 supports like counseling. So that's kind of what I do. And other school psychologists do a lot of different things. As a school psychologist, as a doctored school psychologist, you can work in different facilities outside of school, and that might look a lot different. You might be providing more intense services of working with psychiatrists to provide medication and those types of things.
Thank you.
Interesting. That kind of follows up into my next question pretty good. So what do you love most about your job, basically?
So I think the thing I love most is the variety, for sure. I'm never bored. There's always something to do. There's always something to be better at and grow at. So I'm always learning more and changing my practice based on the new research that's coming out or different things that I've found that's working or not working. And every school is so different. So if you become a school psychologist, you kind of have to like find your niche and like figure out what that looks like for you and how you can be your best. And I like that flexibility, I would say.
Thank you. So what are some skills that you feel are needed for this type of job? And I think that you kind of went into that a little bit when you talked about your typical day, because, you know, some of those skills might be more soft skills, whereas some may be more trainable skills. But what do you feel are kind of the most essential skills to have to be a successful school psychologist?
So I would say when we're talking about soft skills, I didn't say this as the thing that I like most, but I think one of the other things I like, and it's a lot of times novel problem solving. And when I say novel problem solving, I mean you're coming into a problem that you didn't know about before, that you didn't know existed before, right? And so I think that that's one of the skills that you have to have, is being able to think quickly on your feet, being able to make decisions quickly, and being able to think through all the results kind of your decisions so that you can make the best choices possible. So problem solving would be one. I would say flexibility. I mean, that is huge. I think that's something that I have to work on and continue to work on every day. And I think that a lot of school psychologists do, because you get thrown different problems and sometimes you're doing something and an emergency comes up and then you need to drop what you're doing and deal with that emergency. And so you just have to be very flexible and being very willing to change your plans at kind of any given moment in a way.
Interesting.
And then I was going to touch on the trainable skills. So trainable skills, obviously we do a lot of schooling. So you have to learn counseling techniques. You have to also learn assessment techniques. I think people wouldn't realize, but we have an entire class, an entire semester just on cognitive assessments alone. So there is a lot of training that goes into that. And the only people that are qualified to give a cognitive assessment would be a school psychologist or a psychologist also trained in giving cognitive assessments. So there's some pretty intense trainable training that goes into becoming a school psychologist as well.
Interesting. So what are some of the challenges you face in your job?
I think I kind of mentioned them just now. The being flexible, I think that's a challenge, because you never know. Your day could go as planned, as you have it scheduled, or it could not, and then you have to figure out how to make up for the things that you missed or weren't able to get done. So it's definitely a challenge to be flexible and to problem solve. But I kind of like that challenge.
Cool. So, Ms. Grove, what is your work environment like?
Well, you can see I'm in my office now, so this is my work environment. I work in a school. I work in your school, if you're seeing this, and from Greenville. And I have an office, and I push into classrooms, so my environment can kind of change throughout the day. But also, a lot of school psychologists have different environments. Again, there are other school psychologists who work outside the school. There are traveling school psychologists. A lot of the times there will be one school psychologist for an entire district. So some school psychologists may have a couple days at one school and then a couple days at another, or maybe moving through schools throughout the day. So there are a lot of different environments. I would say it's very variable.
Great. And the other question I have, and understandably, this can really vary. So we're wondering what the salary ranges are for a career such as this, and if there are advancement opportunities, if you could touch on that.
Yeah, so I can touch on that. So as a school employee, and in this district specifically, I am on like the pay scale for a teacher's salary. which is based off of the amount of credits that you have. The amount of experience. So you're on a certain step based on your experience and based on your credits. That is something that is pretty standard, I think, in this area to be on the teacher's kind of pay scale. But I know my friend works in Vermont, and in Vermont, they have, they're on the administrative pay scale. So it's kind of a different, they don't have the same union. They're paid a little bit more, but they're treated as an administrator, where I'm more treated kind of like as a teacher. So I think it really depends district to district. But I would say, like, I mean, it's public record what teachers make. I mean, you can literally look up my salary. But it's, it's right now I'm making probably in the like $54,000 a year. Doing what I do here at this school. It does vary slightly from school to school. Like, I know a little further south, my fiance works in a school and he makes a little bit more money than I do. So it also depends on kind of the area you're in and how much the area costs to live in. So
thank you.
Okay. So I was wondering this, were there any classes that you took in middle school or high school that you can like sort of connect to your job now?
Yeah, definitely. So I did New Vision education when I was in high school. I don't know if it doesn't exist anymore where I went to school, but I don't know if it exists here. So it was basically like in preparation to become a teacher, because I originally wanted to become a teacher. So I had to push into different classrooms throughout the county that I lived in. And I worked in high schools with teachers. I worked in middle schools with teachers. I worked in elementary schools. So I got a lot of experience in the classroom and working with different populations, which was very useful. I also worked with speech therapists, occupational therapists, physical therapists through that program, which I think was a great preparation for what I do now. So high school, I would say that's definitely what I did. And I can say that, like, if you're thinking about going into something in psychology in undergrad, that when you move to undergrad, you might want to start taking, because there's not usually like a school psychology track in undergrad. You have to wait till grad school to get there. So if you're thinking about going to school psychology, there's a lot of internship experiences you can take that are in schools. And also I took a crisis intervention class, which taught me a lot of counseling skills. So I would say that if you can take classes kind of in a school or doing counseling, then that would help you kind of be ready when you get to grad school to become a school psychologist.
So it's funny that you mentioned the program that you belong to, because while kids are watching, I did want to mention that Questar 3 has developed a new program called Pathways in Education, and it's available to high school seniors. So it would be something you explore in 11th grade and potentially attend as a 12th grader. And yes, many of those kids are looking to become teachers, but it's also for other school professions. So it reminded me of that program quite a bit when you explained your experience, Ms. Groves. So if kids are interested, watching these career day interviews is really a chance to expose yourself and kind of understand the steps you need to take to reach your goals. So if any of this interests you, you could certainly follow up and talk to Ms. Grove. We're so lucky to have her here in our school to answer questions like that, or of course, follow up with your school counselor and we can help you too. I want to thank you for giving us such a wonderful opportunity to hear about your career as a school psychologist. And I want to thank you, Xander, for helping me conduct this career day interview. I appreciate everyone who gave it a listen, and we hope you enjoyed it. Thank you all.
Thank you.